Welcome back to the Political Pulse, your trusted source for navigating the whirlwind of U.S. politics with a dash of humor and a sprinkle of sanity. I'm Andrew Carter.
And I'm Rachel Bennett. Each week, we sift through the chaos to bring you the stories that matter and the ones that make you wonder if we're all living in a political sitcom.
Okay, so wow, this past week in American politics, man, March 31st to April 6th, 2025. It felt like drinking from a fire hose, honestly.
Yeah.
Just one huge thing after another.
It really was. It was a whirlwind of events, and I think for anyone trying to keep up, it would have been easy to miss the forest for the trees, you know?
Okay.
What we're going to do today is break down the most significant developments and figure out what it all means.
Exactly. Like, what should people really be paying attention to here?
Yeah, what's the signal in all the noise?
Okay, so first up, let's talk about Senator Cory Booker's speech. Like, seriously, over 25 hours on the Senate floor. It's got to be some kind of record, right?
Well, it definitely is. He wrapped up on March 31st, 25 hours and 5 minutes. It actually completely demolished the previous record held by Strom Thurmond. I mean, it's one thing to, just talk for a long time, but this was clearly a really deliberate form of protest.
Yeah, and it seems like he was taking aim at a couple big targets, right? There was President Trump's policies, but then also Elon Musk and what he's been doing with the Department of Government Efficiency.
Exactly. It's interesting because you don't see this kind of tactic that often, this kind of extended speech. It's kind of a way to try and bring as much attention as possible to a particular issue or even try to stall, legislative processes. In this case, it seems like Senator Booker felt really strongly that he needed to make a statement about where things are headed. And the fact that he put in so much prep work, they say he was even fasting and had like 10 binders full of information, just shows how serious he was about this.
Wow, yeah, that's commitment. Okay, so we have this huge political statement. Then a couple of days later, on April 2nd, President Trump drops this bombshell announcement about new tariffs, Liberation Day tariffs, he called them.
Yes. And on the surface, it sounds pretty straightforward, a 10% tariff on everything coming into the U.S. But the details actually paint a much more complicated picture.
Yeah, because it's not just a flat 10% across the board.
Right.
Right. China's actually facing 44% in total, the EU 20%, and then even higher numbers for places like Vietnam and Bangladesh.
Right. And the administration's argument is that this is all about reducing the trade deficit, bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. They're saying it will level the playing field, force countries to play by the rules that benefit American workers and the American economy.
But I gotta say, the markets did not seem to love that idea.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
The initial reaction was actually pretty brutal. The S&P 500 dropped almost 14%. The NASDAQ composite even more, 19%. And this wasn't just a U.S. thing. We saw major indexes in Asia going down, too. So clearly there's a lot of global anxiety about the implications of these tariffs.
And, of course, China wasn't just going to sit back and take it.
Right.
They hit back pretty hard.
Oh, yeah. Within days, they announced their own retaliatory tariffs, 34% on everything coming in from the U.S., set to go into effect on April 10th. And they're not stopping there. They're also talking about tightening up export controls on rare earth materials, which, if you think about it, those are essential for so many industries, smartphones, electric cars, all kinds of tech. So that could really throw a wrench in the works.
It seems like a recipe for chaos, honestly.
Yeah.
And on top of all that, there are already questions about whether these tariffs are even legal.
Right. There are lawsuits popping up already, and the core issue is around presidential power. How far can a president go when it comes to trade? Legal experts are looking at something called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, and that act gives the president certain authorities during national emergencies. But the question now is, do these tariffs actually fall under that umbrella? Is the current trade situation really an emergency that justifies this kind of action? It's a pretty big legal question mark hanging over all of this.
So you've got the markets freaking out, a trade war, brewing potential disruptions to global supply chains, and now these legal challenges. It's hard to imagine a business owner anywhere feeling good about this situation.
Yeah, I think uncertainty is the word of the day right now, and that's exactly what businesses are saying. They're worried about costs going up, supply chains getting messed up, and the fact that all of that is probably going to get passed down to consumers in the form of higher prices. It's a pretty gloomy picture.
Okay, so we have this economic earthquake happening, and then just a few days later, these huge protests start popping up all over the country. Hands-off protests, they're calling them. Millions of people in the streets.
It's remarkable when you look at the scale of it. Over 1,400 demonstrations across the U.S., millions of participants. Big cities like New York, Atlanta, L.A. all saw huge turnouts. And a lot of this anger seems to be directed at recent cuts to social services.
Yeah, I remember seeing that a lot of the protesters felt like essential programs were being gutted to, give tax breaks to the wealthy, basically.
Right. There's this sense that the government is taking from the people who need it most to benefit those who are already doing pretty well, and that frustration is boiling over. It's not just about the cuts, though. People are also taking aim at Elon Musk and the whole Department of Government Efficiency thing.
Yeah, what's that all about? I mean, obviously Musk is a controversial figure, but why is this department in particular such a lightning rod?
It's complicated, and to really understand it, we'd need to take a closer look at, what this department is actually doing and what the specific criticisms are. But it's pretty clear that a lot of people see Musk's involvement in government as a problem. They're worried about, someone from the tech world having so much influence over policy decisions. And it sort of taps into this bigger anxiety about, who's really in charge? Are we being governed by elected officials or by Silicon Valley billionaires?
It's a good question. So,
Yeah.
okay, we've got protests, economic turmoil, and then you have President Trump throwing out this idea of a third term, which, I mean, that's not really a thing, is it?
No, not constitutionally. The 22nd Amendment pretty clearly limits a president to 2 terms. And legal experts are pretty much unanimous on that point. It's a non-starter.
So why even bring it up then? What's the
You're-
strategy there?
Well, I think even just floating the idea has consequences.
Yeah.
It kind of tests the boundaries, It normalizes this idea of maybe ignoring the Constitution or working around it. And that can be dangerous. It can also really energize supporters and maybe sow some doubt or confusion among opponents. So even if it's not a realistic possibility, it still has the potential to really shake things up.
It's definitely a power move.
Okay.
Let's shift gears now and talk about the Wisconsin Supreme Court election. This was a big one, right? And crazy expensive.
It was huge. Susan Crawford beat Brad Schimmel, and it was the most expensive judicial race in U.S. history, almost $100 million spent, which is just insane when you think about it.
Yeah, and we saw some big names getting involved financially, too.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, in particular, dropped a ton of money on this, didn't he?
He did over $25 million to support Schimmel, and Trump also endorsed him. So you can see why people were paying attention to this race. It was a battle for control of the court, basically.
And Crawford's win means the court keeps its liberal majority.
You're right.
Right. So what does that mean for Wisconsin going forward?
Well, it means that for the foreseeable future, the court will likely lean in a more liberal direction on things like voting rights, environmental regulations, things like that. So this election is going to have a lasting impact on the state.
It's wild how these state-level judicial races are becoming such battlegrounds these days. You wouldn't have seen this kind of attention or spending even a few years ago.
Yeah, it's a sign of the times for sure. People are starting to realize that who sits on these courts really matters. And Crawford actually spoke to that in her victory speech. She talked about the importance of an independent judiciary and thanked voters for rejecting outside influences, for not letting big money dictate the outcome. And the turnout for this election was really high, too, which suggests that people are getting more engaged in these down-ballot races.
That's good to hear. Okay, last but not least, we have to talk about the White House Correspondents' Dinner and all the drama with Amber Ruffin being dropped as the host.
Yeah, this one really stirred things up. The dinner is supposed to be this, lighthearted event where journalists and politicians get together. But the decision to remove Ruffin after she said she was planning to make some jokes at the administration's expense, well, it really raises some questions about free speech and the role of comedy in politics.
Yeah, like where's the line between humor and, crossing the line, especially in such a polarized environment? And Ruffin didn't exactly shy away from the controversy either, right?
No, she definitely spoke her mind about it. And I think that just added fuel to the fire and sparked a lot of important conversations about, can you be funny and critical at the same time? Is there space for that in today's political climate? It's tricky.
So let's take a step back for a second. We've covered a lot of ground here. A record-breaking Senate speech, a trade war protests, concerns about the Constitution, a state Supreme Court election that cost a fortune, and a debate about the limits of comedy in politics. It's been a wild week.
It really has.
Yeah.
And each of these stories, in its own way, kind of reflects the major tensions and the changes happening in American politics and society right now. It's a lot to process.
It is. I mean, we saw this huge act of protest in the Senate. Then you have the president making these sweeping changes to the economy and potentially, risking a global trade war. And then on top of that, there are millions of people in the streets protesting cuts and worried about the influence of big money and tech billionaires on the government. And that's not even mentioning the Wisconsin election, which basically came down to a fight over the future of the state's legal system.
Yeah.
It feels like everything is so much more intense these days, like the stakes have never been higher.
Yeah, and I think what connects all of these stories is this question of power. Who has it, who's trying to get it, and how are they using it? We're seeing these battles playing out everywhere in the halls of Congress, in the financial markets, in the streets, even in the realm of comedy. It's a pretty fascinating and maybe a little bit scary time to be paying attention.
It is. So for all of you listening out there, the next time you see a news headline that makes you scratch your head or feel overwhelmed, remember that behind every headline, there's a story about power, about the forces shaping our world. And it's up to all of us to dig a little deeper, to ask the tough questions and figure out what it all means for our lives. Because the future is being written right now, and we all have a role to play in shaping it.
All right, that's a wrap on this week's Political Pulse. Remember, we're bringing you 2 podcasts a week, this weekly recap plus a deep dive where we break down one major story with all the nuance and snark it deserves.
And when breaking news hits, you know we'll be dropping emergency episodes to keep you updated, because the news cycle never sleeps, and neither do we. Don't forget to subscribe and catch us next time for another round of political chaos.
Until then, stay informed and stay sane.
See you next time.
Bye, everyone.